Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. This is my second video version of the podcast, but I've already released this episode on my audio version of the podcast. So it's not going to be identical because I don't tend to script the episode, so I can't go back and look at exactly what I said. I've had a listen to kind of remind myself, but yeah, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be obviously similar. And what I'm going to do today is talk to you about what hypnobirthing actually is. So if you enjoy this and you want to go and listen to the kind of original version of this, which very well may differ slightly, then you just need to look for the Hypnobirthing podcast, and it is on all of the kind of major podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, I'm pretty sure it's on the Google one. So please have a look for it if you'd also like to listen. I've got loads more episodes as well on there with all different kind of birth topics. And while it's not going to be the most professional of recordings, I actually just record it through Zoom. So the quality is not great because my laptop camera quality is not fantastic. But it's not going to be like cinema standard video, no fancy editing. It's just going to be me talking to you, and hopefully what I'm telling you is interesting enough to keep you entertained and keep you interested. So as I said, today's episode is going to be about what hypnobirthing actually is. I mean, I get so many questions on what is hypnobirthing, and I get so many kind of comments on what people think it is. And that's why I wanted to do this episode on here as well, because there are so many misconceptions about hypnobirthing, and I wanted to talk about them and kind of dispel some of them. So a lot of the decisions that we make, in life, but particularly during birth and labour and pregnancy, unfortunately, a lot of them are based on assumptions rather than on facts. And they're based on things we think we know about something and not on what is actually true. Some examples of that are, firstly, an assumption someone might have about hypnobirthing would put them off of doing it. I'm very aware that the name hypnobirthing is not the best, and I am in full agreement about that, and it puts people off. The word hypno puts people off. I'll talk about that in just a moment though. So they're kind of basing that choice, that decision off of an assumption about what they think hypnobirthing is. And you know what? That can affect their labour, because people who do hypnobirthing typically have positive labour experiences, positive birth experiences. They experience birth differently. Their birth will look a different way. Not all birth looks the same. But generally, they have a positive or a more positive experience than someone who doesn't do it. So already, if somebody is making the decision to not do a hypnobirthing course based off of that assumption, it's already affecting their labour. So that's why it's so important to make decisions based off of fact and not off of assumption. Another way that this also works, another example, is people will give birth in a hospital. So they will not want to give birth at home because they assume that home birth is unsafe. And that is an assumption, and it's not true. There's tons of evidence that proves otherwise. But people will make that assumption and make that decision without really educating themselves on it and looking at all of the information. So therefore their birth experience is going to be different. And nothing about hypnobirthing, and again, I'm going to talk about this because I'm going to talk about misconceptions, but nothing about hypnobirthing is about saying you have to have a home birth in water with no pain relief. Like, you can give birth wherever you want and still do hypnobirthing, but it's more about you close off all of your options if you don't do the research and kind of get informed about everything, because it's only really once you have all of the information that you can actually make a proper decision, a decision that's right for you. How can you possibly make the right decision when you don't have all of the information? You just can't. So hypnobirthing, a lot of it is about just that. It's about empowering you to make decisions and to ask questions. And so if I start from kind of the beginning of what you can expect from a hypnobirthing course, to start with, a hypnobirthing course is a full antenatal education. So just as you might go to another antenatal class and learn all about childbirth and kind of the different stages of labour, the pain relief options and all of this, hypnobirthing teaches the exact same stuff. So we teach you everything you need to know about having a baby, the different stages, what happens after you've had a baby, you know, what pain relief options there are, what birthplace settings there are, and what's available to you in those settings. It's a full antenatal education. So first and foremost, that's what it is. It's teaching you everything you need to know about having a baby. Alongside that though, it also teaches you about what is actually happening within your body when you're having a baby. So the physiology of birth. Despite, I think, what we think, I mean, I didn't know what actually happens within our body when we're giving birth. I didn't know that before I did hypnobirthing class, because we don't learn this stuff in school. Nobody sits down and teaches us that in biology, you know, what is actually happening. So I think a lot of the time we assume we know and we actually don't. So hypnobirthing teaches you what your body is doing. And a course, you know, a good course will give you demonstrations of what's happening within your body as well during labour. And it's only really when you understand what your body's trying to do during the labour process that it actually becomes less scary, and you learn ways to manage it and to help the process along. So your body is obviously incredibly important during labour. Your body is doing a lot of hard work during your labour. But the mind is the most important part of your body during labour, because your body is perfectly built, perfectly designed to birth a baby. Despite what we see on television, despite the horror stories we hear, the body is perfectly designed to have a baby. We do so many other functions every single day of our life without thinking twice about it. We breathe air every single day, and we don't doubt our body's ability to breathe air. We don't doubt our body's ability to blink. We don't doubt our body's ability to keep our heart beating. Every single function that our body does every single day, we have faith in it that it will do it. When we get pregnant, although the process is different for everybody, and some people might find that process harder, pregnancy is something that we kind of trust our body to do. It grows a baby, it creates a whole new human being from basically nothing, grows it, keeps it safe, nourishes it, keeps it warm for 9 months. And we have faith that our body will do that. We know our body is capable of it. It's not going to let us down. It can grow a human being. However, when it comes to getting the baby out, for some reason, we don't trust that our body is capable. We don't think our body is built to do that. Just like it is built to do all of those other things I just said. It's built to defecate. It's built to urinate. It's also built to birth a baby, and it does it in the same way it does all these other things. We don't need to do anything to help the process along. Our body has got it. Our body will do it. But we need to work on our mind. So it is our mind that is getting in the way of childbirth. It's not our body. Our body has got it. Our body can do it. It's our mind. Our mind is incredibly powerful. It controls everything our body does. Our body doesn't do anything without our mind telling it to do it. So that's where hypnobirthing comes in. So as I said, it gives you that full antenatal education and loads of kind of just general education on what your body is doing. But it also teaches you about how important the mind is and how crucial it is that your mind is in the right space. And we have grown up, the majority of people have grown up believing birth to be negative and believing it to be painful and something that we have to just endure in order to have our baby. That's how we've grown up, because that's what we see on television. We see birth depicted a certain way on television. We hear horror stories from friends and family. Our own mothers might have told us how awful birth is. We've grown up thinking it's horrible. So when it comes to our own time to have a baby, of course, we're going to just think it's going to be awful. Our mind's going to be in the wrong place. We're going to be thinking negatively about it. Hypnobirthing helps to change that and to get rid of that negativity and turn it into positive. So basically it reframes any negative thoughts you have about birth into positive. And the majority of us hold some form of fear around birth. No matter how big or small, it could be really big, debilitating fear that somebody has about birth, or it could be teeny tiny, just a little part of us that's a bit like, oh, I'm a bit worried it's going to be really, really painful. You can hear them. So no matter what your fear looks like, how big or how small, if there's fear there when it comes to labour, the likelihood is that you will feel it during labour. Because when you're in labour, it's something that, even if you've done it before, it's an experience that you don't do often. So, you're very vulnerable, you're very emotional, you've got tons of hormones going around. So if you have kind of a tiny little bit of fear creep in, it's going to be felt during labour. So it's really important during your pregnancy to get rid of that fear, to eliminate it, so that during labour there isn't the fear there. You can just go into labour and allow your body to do what it needs to do. So relaxations, affirmations, all of this, that is very important part of hypnobirthing, teaching you to relax and to enable yourself and to practice relaxing and breathing. Because what that does is that kind of takes that conscious thinking part of your brain and it kind of gets it out of the way during labour. So when you are in this deeply relaxed state, that thinking part of your brain isn't getting in the way. It's not cropping up and saying, what's that noise? What's that sound? What's that smell? During your labour to kind of disrupt what your body's doing. It's out the way. It's nice and quiet. It's nice and still. And then your body's able to do what it needs to do. So the term hypnobirthing, hypnos actually means sleep. So that is a reason why I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it, because of the name and because of the association that we have with stage hypnosis, where somebody gets made to cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog and kind of is in a trance and doesn't know what they're doing. We have that association with it, but stage hypnosis isn't really real. Nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do. So the people that get put on stage for stage hypnosis shows, they self-select. They want to go up onto stage and it's all done for entertainment. It's not real. Nobody can make you do anything you don't want to do. So no, hypnobirthing isn't about waving a clock in front of your face and putting you into a trance and telling you birth is going to be painless and all of this. It is about relaxing you. So when we say hypno, it refers to sleep, and it's not a kind of, you're not actually asleep. It's just a very, very deep state of relaxation that we kind of encourage you and teach you how to enter. It's like a self-hypnosis. So during a hypnobirthing course, typically we given relaxation tracks and relaxation scripts. And the idea of those is that they will deeply relax you so that you are very, very used to relaxing. And as part of your practice with hypnobirthing, you just need to practice listening to these scripts and practice relaxing, because the more you practice being able to deeply relax, the easier you'll be able to do it when it comes to labour. If you don't practice it, when it comes to labour, it'll be much, much harder for you to get into that deeply relaxed state that you need to be in. So that's why the practice element is so important. That's where those relaxations come from. The other thing is that they're full of positivity. They're full of visualizations, positivity, affirmations. And what that is doing is reframing those negative thoughts that are in your subconscious and turning them into positives. So alongside that, the other thing hypnobirthing does is it empowers you. And I've mentioned this already, but such a huge part of how your labour is going to go and how positive it's going to be is how many questions you ask and how much control and responsibility you take for your own labour. So it's all about asking questions. It's not just about accepting what somebody tells you. You don't have to be confrontational, you don't have to argue with people, you don't have to be rude. Just asking questions. Nothing can be done to you during labour without your fully informed consent. So there is nothing that the hospital, the doctor, the midwife can do to you, there's no procedure they can do without your consent. No matter how sometimes it feels like that, I get that. Sometimes it feels like they are the medical professional, we must do what they say. But that's not the case. You have to give full consent. So unfortunately, I think the percentage is something like 90% of people don't realise they have a choice when it comes to labour, which means the vast, vast majority of people are going into labour and just accepting all of these things that get offered to them without really asking whether they're right for them. And don't forget, these doctors and midwives, they're just doing their job. So they have procedures, they have protocols that they also need to adhere to so that they don't get sued. So when they're offering you an induction at 40 plus 12, when they're offering to break your waters during labour to speed things up, or offering to put you on the hormone drip to speed things up, they're doing it because they have to offer it. They have to tick a box that says they've offered it so that you don't come back at some point and sue them and say you never offered it to me. They have to do it. It doesn't mean it's right for you. It just means they have to do it. So you don't have to say yes. You can say no. If you don't want to be induced at 40 plus 12, don't do it. And I'm going to have an episode on inductions. There's already one on the podcast if you want to listen to that. So I'll recreate that for this. But it's a big topic, induction. So I will do one on that as well. But you don't have to do these things. And that's the main thing that you need to know. That it is your body. It is your baby. You have autonomy over your body. So you do not have to say yes to anything. And I think so many people don't know that. And what happens then is that they kind of experience labour and they feel a bit like it's just happened to them. They didn't have any control over anything. Labour happened to them. And I hear it so often. And it's not a nice feeling to have when you feel like your control's been taken away from you. So it's really important to ask questions. And one of the analogies I use often, and I've said it a lot on my podcast, I say it in my course, I've said it on other podcasts where I've been a guest, is that if you imagine you are going to have some sort of cosmetic surgery done to your face, so for example, you were going to go and have a nose job, I guarantee the majority of people having a nose job would ask their surgeon a million questions, because it's on their face. They want to make sure that whatever is being done to their face is going to look nice. So they will ask, what happens if that goes wrong? What's an alternative? What else can we do other than this? They will ask a ton of questions, and that generally is accepted. Nobody thinks, oh gosh, they're so annoying. Look at them asking all these questions. But for some reason, when it comes to giving birth, one of the most important experiences of your life, a rite of passage, people don't ask questions. They just accept what's being given to them. So ask questions. Treat it like you are having something done to your face. Ask questions. It is perfectly acceptable to ask people questions because you don't know how to make a decision without all the information. So an example is going back to induction. If they want to book you in for an induction, why? Ask them why. Well, they might say, well, if we don't, then the risk of XYZ goes up. Ask them for more information. What is the actual risk? Tell me the risk. And if they don't know, give them your email address and they can find out and email it to you. Or you can ask them to direct you to some research that supports what they're saying. You don't have to make a decision straight away. You can ask a question like, what happens if we wait? Is there an alternative? Just ask questions. And do you know what? If you do a hypnobirthing course, you will get a ton more information on this stuff, a list of questions and kind of more information on how to really voice yourself and get yourself heard. But it's really important to do that. Okay, I'm waffling on. So what I wanted to cover now was just a few of the really common misconceptions about hypnobirthing. So the first one is that hypnobirthing is alternative and a bit woo-woo. So I think I've kind of covered that already in that it isn't. It's not any of those things. Hypnobirthing is incredibly logical. It's not anything new. We used to give birth perfectly fine without medical intervention. And I completely accept there are some circumstances where medical intervention is very much required. And we are very incredibly lucky that we have it. It gets used too much, so that's the problem we're having. It's used when it doesn't need to be used. So hypnobirthing actually isn't anything special, and one of the things I liken it to as well is organic fruit. So, somebody might be like, oh, I buy organic fruit, like it's this really special, amazing thing. But organic fruit is just fruit before we came along and messed with it. It's fruit in its rawest form before we messed with it. That's exactly what hypnobirthing is. It's just birth. It's birth before we messed with it. It's nothing special. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing alternative. It's just birth before we came and we stuck our nose in and we got involved in it. So it is not alternative. Another common misconception is that hypnobirthing is for a certain type of birth. For example, a home water birth with no pain relief. Again, absolutely not true. Hypnobirthing is for every single type of birth. As I've said this already, but you can give birth where you want. You can give birth in hospital, you can give birth at home, you can give birth by a lake. You can have all the intervention, you can have all the pain relief, you can have nothing at all. It doesn't matter. It's not about, now this might sound funny, but it's not about necessarily how your birth goes. I know people that have had pretty intervention heavy births, or they've had cesareans, or they've had all the pain relief. But because they've done hypnobirthing, their experience is incredibly positive. Like their birth was amazing. It was so positive. Because they did hypnobirthing and because they chose all of those things based off of information and they made informed decisions about them. If you had the same births written on paper and somebody who hadn't done hypnobirthing was telling you about their experience, I would put good money on the fact that they would tell it negatively. Their view would be negative of it. And that's because they perhaps haven't made those decisions themselves or feel like they haven't. So that's the difference. It doesn't matter necessarily kind of how your birth goes. And that sounds really controversial. And of course it does matter. But for example, my first daughter, she ended up being a forceps delivery, and I had an episiotomy with her, and they were the two things I absolutely didn't want before I went into labour. Like, I don't know anyone that wants them, but I definitely didn't want them. But at the time, I made that choice. I knew I could say no, but I knew it was the best thing for us, and it was okay, and it was fine. And you know what? My experience was positive, but somebody else might have had that exact same experience, and they might tell that story as really horrific. So it doesn't matter how your birth looks. It doesn't matter if you're high risk or you're low risk, if you're having a planned cesarean, if you want an epidural, if you don't want an epidural, if you want to give birth in the hospital, if you want to give birth at home. It suits everybody. And actually, for people who are having more complicated pregnancies, they need to do it, because those are the people that are going to be making much tougher decisions and much tougher choices. So it's even more important that they do it so that they know their rights and they know what they can ask and they know what they can say no to. The third misconception is that if you do hypnobirthing, you shouldn't feel any pain. This one bothers me so much, and I've heard other podcasts where people say this. They say this to people, that you shouldn't be feeling pain if you do hypnobirthing. It's utter rubbish. I would never tell anybody that if you do hypnobirthing, you won't feel pain. I think that is setting people up for failure, because what's going to happen is the first sign of any pain, they're going to chuck their hypnobirthing out the window because I'm doing it wrong, I failed, I felt pain. So absolutely not true. Some people don't feel pain. That's what I was saying. Some people don't. Absolutely. Some people don't feel pain. Some people describe it more like a sensation, or they describe it as being very powerful or uncomfortable, but not necessarily painful. Some people do find it painful and will describe it as painful. So hypnobirthing is never going to promise you a pain-free birth, but what it will do is it will give you the tools and the techniques and the knowledge to manage that pain much better. So what it will do is it will reduce the amount of pain that you feel. It might reduce it to nothing, but it might just reduce it a little bit. But it will help you to manage that pain, because it's all about relaxing. So if you're relaxed, your body works much better. If you're tense, it's going to be more painful because you're tensed up, and your body is not going to work as well when you're tense. So it's all about relaxing, breathing, and kind of using visualizations and imagery to really manage that pain. The last misconception I'm going to talk about, which I think I've probably already covered, but is that you're not allowed any pain relief if you do hypnobirthing. Again, like, you can do what you like. You can have pain relief if you like. People who do hypnobirthing, a lot of them don't feel like they need to have pain relief. Maybe gas and air, but the breathing techniques are really, really powerful. So you might choose not to, but if you do, if you decide you want to have it, that's okay. That's okay. You can have pain relief. it's your choice. And that's what hypnobirthing is. It's all about making your choice and it being you that does it. You know, it is your choice, your option. I said this to a friend actually the other day, but hospital policy, hospital guidelines are not the law. And this kind of, maybe I should have added in earlier when I was talking all about making decisions and feeling like you can't say no to things. But hospital policy is not law. You know, you can say no. You don't have to do anything they suggest. You're not going to get arrested. You're not going to get chucked in prison. It's not law. It's just guidelines. That's all it is. It's guidelines. Very well, you know, listen to them. Listen to what they're saying. But then ultimately, the choice is yours because it is your body and your baby. So listen to what everyone's telling you. Do your own research. There's tons of books. There's tons of Instagram accounts. There's tons of stuff out there that have so much great information and evidence and research in them. I would just advise reading as much as you possibly can about these topics because then you're so informed, you can make these decisions really, really easily. Okay, I'm going to stop waffling now because I feel like this has gone on for quite a long time. But hopefully that's given you more of a kind of overview of what hypnobirthing is. And hopefully you now feel a bit more interested in hypnobirthing. There are great teachers all around the world that do hypnobirthing. I teach as well, so if you want to find out more about my courses, I'll put a link to my website below, but I teach worldwide as well because I typically teach on Zoom, which works really well. I do group courses, private courses. I've taught all around the world, which is fantastic. So please, you know, if you want to get in touch and you're interested, I would love to. It's really important that you are comfortable with who's teaching you. So if you don't like me very much, that's fine. There's tons of other teachers. I would say go onto the KG Hypnobirthing website and search your postcode and look for some teachers, or just Google hypnobirthing teachers near you. There's loads. Make sure you're comfortable with who it is and that your kind of views on things, perspectives on things align. It's really important. But yeah, I'm also on Instagram at @the_nurture_nest. So come along and follow on there because I post so much on there. I do giveaways sometimes, and there's just a ton more kind of information and stats and research and topics that we can discuss and things like that. So thank you so much for watching. Sorry it's a bit waffly, sorry the quality is really bad, but hopefully the information was really good and you will come back again for my next episode. And please, I'd love it if you'd subscribe so that you can be notified of my next episode. But thank you very much and I will speak to you soon.